People in our own backyards are hurting. There are insecurities around food, economics, mental health, access to justice, healthcare, and our society continues to become more divisive. But there is hope. Right here in Chicagoland, there are people and organizations who are on the front lines working to bring about positive and transformative change. Each week, we're going to meet some of these agents of change and examine how they are spurring innovative ideas and finding solutions to push our society forward in a more just direction. I'm Sufyan Sohel, and this is Change Agents. Palestine, Ukraine, Venezuela, Sudan, Syria. Dealing with issues like war, famine, oppression, persecution. There are currently over 110 million displaced individuals, those forcibly displaced worldwide due to persecution, conflict, violence, or human rights violations. This includes those both internally displaced and those that are refugees seeking safety and security in a nation not their own. The refugee story in our country is as old as the story of America. Approximately 50 or 60 Puritans fled religious persecution in England and found a new home on our shores, what we celebrate Thanksgiving for. The Statue of Liberty, standing proud on our Atlantic coast, is a beacon of hope for many and is inscribed with the words of Emma Lazarus, who wrote, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore." Despite those welcoming words, the reality for many seeking refuge in the United States has been a very different experience. From travel bans and border walls to anti-immigrant rhetoric and hate, our cities and our country do not seem to reflect some of the basic tenets of freedom, hope, and opportunity that America was built on. My first guest tonight leads an organization whose mission is to provide innovative, dignity-centered relief services for refugees in the Chicagoland area. Her 20-year career has focused on human rights, and she's a passionate advocate for women and girls, particularly our refugees and asylyees. I am so excited to have with me today Alisa, Bhachu, the Executive Director of the Chicago Refugee Coalition. Alisa, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real honor.
Of course, the honor is mine. I shared a little bit about America's refugee history, very troubled and complex. And throughout history, we've seen time after time of those seeking a better opportunity in America face challenges. Something that we're seeing now also with the migrant crisis and a lot of rhetoric about whom should be allowed and whom should not be allowed into our country. And those challenges not only exist, in my opinion, for individuals trying to come into the United States, but increase a little bit once they arrive. Can you share a little bit about what you've experienced some of these challenges to be?
Well, thank you for asking that question. And historically, the United States has been a welcoming country for refugees since the early 80s. Under the Reagan administration, we've been welcoming and providing refugee resettlement for refugees from across the globe. Our country has traditionally led the number of countries that have resettled refugees. There's been some prior administrations that sort of threw a bit of a loop into those statistics and figures, but they are increasing again. And what I have seen in our own city and in our own backyard in the last year and a half in response to the new arrivals that have been bussed up from the southern border is just this overwhelming outpouring of goodwill and hospitality that Chicagoans have to welcome individuals who are seeking asylum and have fled circumstances within their own countries that just became intolerable for many kind of complex factors, right? So our organization was founded to step in where traditional refugee resettlement aid agencies leave off. And we also, the research bears itself out that the first 18 months after someone arrives is the most vulnerable time where they're susceptible to poverty and hunger They need access to resources and connections and networks. So our coalition was really founded to step in to be providing for some of the most basic needs and supports that we can be providing. So we're proud of that. We're proud of that.
That's really great work that you're doing. You talked about the migrant crisis. I sometimes feel that people think the only refugees and asylees that we have in Chicago who are newly arriving are from our southern border. Where else are you seeing people come from?
There are also people who are seeking asylum from the Middle East, from North Africa, from other countries, but primarily the scenario of individuals who have been bussed up from the southern states has been individuals from Venezuela. What we're looking at now, and our city has done an incredible job of responding to this humanitarian issue. We've seen 27 shelters set up across the city. Currently, over 30,000 individuals have arrived. Half of those are young families with children. There's been an incredible response from Chicago public schools in terms of teeing up services and programs and translation services to meet the needs of thousands of young students who are coming into our community and our schools. So there's a smattering and a diversity of people who are always seeking asylum at our various borders, but primarily the new arrivals that we're seeing are Venezuelan.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that insight. So tell me about, once you talked about a few of the challenges they face once they arrive in the city, housing, and some of the limit of the relief provided to them. Can you talk a little bit more about some of those challenges once they arrive to Chicago?
Yes. So upon arrival, some of the challenges that are encountered are, like you had mentioned, the very basic ones like housing, safety, access to employment, permits to work, and so forth. And there's been a really good response to make pathways around gaining economic opportunity. We've seen a great response from Chicago businesses and funding for Chicago businesses to hire the new arrivals. I think one of the greatest challenges in settling into a new place is finding your own sense of self amongst all of the, tossing and turning of the challenges that you're trying to navigate. And as I mentioned, half of the individuals who are coming, they're families. They have young children to protect and nurture. Last fall, when we were facing the situation where there were thousands of people living outside of the police stations as the winter was coming, what we saw was just this extraordinary coordinated effort of Chicago community-based organizations, nonprofits, city faith-based communities, especially student groups coming together. We were able to organize and dispatch individuals to be working, doing intakes and direct service distribution at the police stations. And so the needs are, for every individual, are unique to them in some ways in terms of what is it that they're wanting to accomplish, where are they wanting to go? Do they have anchor family here that they're wanting to connect, or is Chicago just a stopping point and they're heading on to somewhere else? So the coordinated effort that we see sort of finally starting to sort of gel and come together now that there's just been some time for all of the agencies involved to sit down and have a broader strategy and cross-coordination has been really incredible to be a part of.
That's awesome.
It's been an honor, yeah.
What about the argument that the resources going to these communities should be spent on communities that are already here? How do you push back against that narrative?
Well, I would say it's a both and. I would say that it's a very salient and critical point that it is a truth that communities across our city have been disinvested. And there needs to be resources poured into other communities outside of just refugees and migrants. So absolutely, yes. And I feel just from an ethical and a moral imperative, when you have certain communities who are extraordinarily vulnerable, regardless of how you fall on the issue of immigration, right? The need is still within our own community. It's in our own backyard. We have tens of thousands of people who need to be supported, and need for there's a need for a coordinated response in that way. So I would say yes, and there are extraordinary resources to try to fight for and to allocate for people who have those needs.
Absolutely. Thank you. I love the yes and. Tell me more about your organization. What are some of the services and programs that you are providing? Tell me about this whole idea of a coalition.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks so much. So we were founded in 2018 to step in and provide direct service relief for refugees. We do that through a food banking program in partnership with local companies and corporations. So for 5 years, we partnered with Misfits Market, formerly Imperfect Foods, on our food banking program. We feed over 300 people a week. We've distributed 140,000 meals since we were founded, primarily on the north side in Rogers Park community. And then we also partner with Chicago Public Schools, and we manage a refugee resource center out of Sullivan High School, which is affectionately known as Refugee High for the number of refugees and asylum seekers who are enrolled there. So through that resource center, we distribute about $500,000 worth of in-kind and donated goods, primarily also through corporate and community partnerships. So we work in a tremendous way to garner in-kind support and resources, and then distribute them to the individuals who have significant needs.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What are you hoping, what's your goal? In the next 3-5 years, what do you see your organization evolving to more broadly meet the needs of some of these refugees?
Thank you. I see us expanding the resource center model to other locations throughout the city. One particular partnership that I'm really excited about is the partnership with the city of Chicago that we just announced last week. So when you look at the full spectrum of the way the city has responded to the migrant crisis, the shelters are functioning and doing well. There are currently no individuals who are sleeping out on the streets. That's a huge success, but there was a massive gap in allowing everyday Chicagoans to get involved either at the shelters that are housing individuals, because there was a sort of a bit of a pause around background checks and a thoroughness of making sure that people were really trained and understood both the context of the crisis itself, but then how to skillfully, be working with and serving and understanding the needs of new arrivals. So we launched a platform called The Hub, and it's available on our website. You can sign up, and we launched that last October to sort of meet this gap in volunteerism, because people haven't historically been able to volunteer to date. But now with this new partnership that we just announced, over 1,000 people have registered and signed up since we went live. And we're just overwhelmed with this extraordinary a community of people with incredible gifts and talents that they're wanting to offer. So that, I think, will be an impact that will live on. And then, we continue to grow partnerships where we're placing people with different opportunities and so forth. So for me, the opportunity to give everyday Chicagoans a way to actually do something was really profound and meaningful, and something that we sort of really advocated for and fought for and are excited about.
We're running out of time, but I have one last question. I'm really curious to know, what keeps you doing this every day?
Oh, thank you for asking that question. What keeps me doing this is that the person who has a particular need for hospitality or direct services, who has a child who has a need, they're no different than I am. They're no different than my own child. And to me, that is really, the core principle on which the Refugee Coalition was founded was dignity-centered relief, and just a deep belief in the inherent dignity of every human being, and working for a world where everyone has the opportunity to grow and to thrive and to flourish and create the lives they want for themselves. I think that's what motivates me.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
What inspiring work. I am so excited to learn more about how we all can better support our refugee community. We'll be right back with our next guest.
Hi, I'm Bianca Cotton. On a new episode of Behind the Confident Smile, I'll be sitting in conversation with Diana Munoz.
They gave me a hand when I needed it, and I want to be able to do that for someone else.
Join the conversation Monday, March 4th at 7 p.m. on CAN TV Cable Channel 19 and streaming on cantv.org and CAN TV Plus app. Experience the power of community television.
Welcome back. My next guest tonight was born and raised in Kenya and lived in Saudi Arabia before moving to the United States last year. A beneficiary of the programs offered by the Chicago Refugee Coalition, she is now a coordinator with the Coalition's Resource Center. I am so pleased to introduce my next guest, Faiza Haider. Faiza, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Faiza, tell us a little bit about what brought you and the Chicago Refugee Coalition together.
Well, initially, when we came to the States, when we were looking for a school for my son, at Sullivan High is where we managed to get a spot for him, and I met with his guide, with a advisor. Yes. Mm-hmm. So she is the one who actually got me in touch with the CRC and Connor, the director, and we went into the resource center, and I was quite pleasantly surprised to see what they had, and they had all kinds of things to offer, from clothes to household items to just basic hygiene, and that's how I got to know that this center is actually here, and they cater for a lot of newcomers, and they help out with, just the basic things that a person is looking for, especially when you move to a new country and you really don't know about so many things, where to buy stuff and, stuff like that. So that's basically how I got introduced to them.
Interesting. And I think that's people don't realize that. My parents came in the late 70s from India, and you leave your whole family, everything behind, you come to this new country, and you're basically all alone. And where do you start? From everything from school to groceries to household things and everything in between, language. So it's great that you had this. What are some of the challenges you hear others experiencing when they come here, people that you may work with?
Well, most of the challenges, I think, once they move here is, of course, the language. They don't speak the language. So they're always looking for something to connect with. And through, I think, CRC, I would speak from my experience as well, is that because I'm lucky enough to speak Urdu, Punjabi, and Kiswahili, and a little bit of Arabic with my background from being in Saudi. So I feel that the challenge is language first and foremost, and then, of course, next would be just the basic stuff that they need, or actually they don't even recognize some of the things that you offer. They're not even aware of what certain things are used for. So the resource center comes in very handy in the sense, like I felt that I could help out with some language issues. Like I was so excited when somebody was speaking Swahili and I knew they were coming from Congo or a Swahili speaking country, and I would, just want to jump in and say, yes, how can I help? Because thankfully I can still speak a good amount of it and understand it. So explaining to them, what's a certain thing used for, they may actually not know what a gel is, or, so it's like to explain to them. And definitely, they're the different foods here through the food program. Again, it's like, it's a good opportunity for them to be able to be introduced to the new foods. So that's also something that they have a challenge with, is just trying to understand that, the way life is here and the different things that they're not used to from having back home. And I think another one is probably sense of community, Because once they come in, it's like just being able to fit in. So that's how what I've experienced.
How about in terms of what need do you see your organization filling for newly arrived refugees and asylees that they may not realize that you offer?
They actually don't know that we offer, the clothes or household items or hygiene products. They don't know. So like when a family comes in and they're brought to us, then we introduce them that yes, this is, welcome them and let them know that this is our space and this is a place where you can come and, take whatever you need. Nobody's going to ask you or judge you or anything. It's like if you need canned foods and different products and whatever they need. And we also ask them if there's something that they're looking for and they don't find, so that we can try and, cater for that later on and make sure that we're filling in those gaps as well.
Wonderful. Now, if I want to drop off some canned foods, can I do that? Can I just drive up and drop off a bag?
Yes, you can drop them off. We normally go through an email that's on our website, and then you can contact us so that we can coordinate the time and the place so that, we make sure that there's somebody to receive you and make sure that the donations are also all, of the fulfilling all the basic actual needs, because you're trying to aim at things that they need. You want to focus more on the needs are being fulfilled rather than having something that's come in and it's not being used or it's not that beneficial to them. So yeah, it's their urgent
needs. Not just
needs.
me getting rid of all the old stuff.
Yeah, it's just their urgent needs that we try and focus on.
Oh, that's helpful to know.
Yes.
So I can visit your website to learn more about that.
Definitely.
Can you talk a little bit about the diversity of the types of people that you're supporting? Are they all from one country? Are you seeing many different countries? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Diversity is definitely a lot, because there are students who are from all over the world. Actually, there are 36 different types of languages spoken within the school.
Wow! Just at Sullivan High
Just
School.
at Sullivan High. There you would find people from Jamaica, from, of course, Venezuela, from Spain, from Mexico, Spanish-speaking backgrounds, and the Pashto-speaking backgrounds from Afghanistan, some from Pakistan, and they're from all over, from Myanmar, from Bangladesh. So there's really a lot of them.
So with that diversity, what would you say are some of the biggest misconceptions that the larger Chicagoland community may have on the refugee community? What don't we know? Like what assumptions may we make about them? We see sometimes in the news like negative language around refugees. We see, we had a president who said we don't want any refugees in this country and no immigration and border walls and all that. So I think there's some stereotypes around refugees. So how can we help break those stereotypes down? Like what should we know more about this community?
I think first and foremost, when someone comes in, you treat them as a human. You treat them with respect. You treat them with dignity. And I think it's wrong to judge anybody who comes from a certain place, because you don't know what kind of a journey they've traveled to get here. So I would say it's just very natural as a human being to see the other person just as themselves and how they would like to be treated themselves. So it's just not to judge anybody and to give them a chance. Everybody needs a chance at a second, at a second life that they're actually finding and coming to a place where they need to find some solace and be a support to them. And guide your fellow neighbors as well, or just, inform them that we need to be a little more helpful and just extend a lending hand, and that's the least we can do.
And do you see more and more people coming out, extending their hands in support of these communities?
Oh yes, definitely. I see that through the donations that come in with the corporations and, the Glories Hospital as well, and other people in kind who bring stuff forward. They are interested and they very much ask. They want to know what kind of help they can extend. So we really appreciate that.
Thank you. I really appreciate you joining us today on Change Agents, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. We're so grateful for Faiza for sharing her story and her passionate efforts on behalf of our refugee neighbors. Sit tight, we'll be right back with this week's Change in Action.
Hello, I'm Rich Robbins, inviting you to join me for the series Soft and Tender. Soft and Tender celebrates the resilience and emotional depth of Black fatherhood, offering a powerful narrative on family bonds and ongoing challenges faced by Black communities.
As a father and as a parent in general, you have to know that you're not going to always understand, and that's okay.
Tune in on CAN-TV, cable channel 19, or stream at cantv.org or the CAN-TV Plus app. Experience the power of community television.
In this week's Change in Action, we meet a nonprofit leader whose son died by suicide in 2020. She founded an organization to honor the legacy of her son. We are so honored to introduce you to Refugee Maxey, founder and executive director of Soul Survivors.
My name is Sufyan Sohel. I am the founder of Soul Survivors of Chicago. We're a nonprofit organization that founded ourselves after the tragic loss of my son by way of suicide, May 27th, 2020. Soul Survivors provides a lot of education, awareness, and prevention through our community, particularly for Black Americans, to know about suicide, mental health awareness, and prevention. We go to the conceal and carry classes. We stand outside and pass out gun locks. Mental health awareness materials to the barbershops, beauty salons, the local bodegas, the liquor stores. We go to the schools and the high schools, and we talk about mental health and suicide. And we share this story to normalize, to say, hey, it's okay to not be okay. A couple days after the loss of my son, I went into his room and I said to myself, what am I going to do? You know, what am I going to do? And I looked down and I saw his shoe, and I said to myself, wouldn't it be great if I could donate Jamal's shoe, sanitize it and clean it and put his name in it, and gift it to someone in an organization, persons who might be in distress, and understand that, hey, this is my son's shoe. When you walk in the shoe, walk in understanding that his legacy was cut short, so walk in purpose. I'll never see my son graduate from college. I'll never have grandchildren. But with you walking with this shoe, it gives a protective factor to understand that you're continuing the legacy. So with that outreach, we really address those underserved areas and hopefully gain some awareness to what the stigma keeps us from understanding. We all are all this together. It takes a village to raise a child, but a child to teach a village. So let's learn from them and come together as we relate to bringing this stigma to end. You can get in touch with Soul Survivors of Chicago in a lot of ways. Thankfully, we have a website, Soul Survivors of Chicago, spelled S-O-U-L, survivorsofchicago.com. You can also email us at ssofchicago@gmail.com. And we love to hear from you.
Thank you, Rafia, for sharing your story and your very important work around suicide prevention and promoting mental health and wellness. Thank you also to Alisa and to Faiza for your unyielding support of our refugees. With over 110 million refugees displaced around the world and thousands flooding into our country and city each day and year, I am so proud that Chicago has an organization like yours committed to dismantling systemic barriers and providing a holistic approach to meeting the full spectrum of our refugees' needs. Afghan-Canadian artist Hangama Amiri wrote, "No one chooses to be a refugee. We all deserve to have a home and to be safe." Like Alisa and Faiza, let us support our neighbors who have had to leave their homes. Let us open our hearts and help them feel safe. Let us welcome them to our city. We each have the power to do some good and to help those around us facing challenges. We can all be change agents. Let us all be change agents. Thank you again, my friends. I will see you next week.